Hey there, welcome back again. Well, I'm slowly making my way down this lineup. We've got a 171 for sharpening, a 250 with a running issue. We're going to start with this one right now. Got a 271 that got hit by a tractor, broken handle, an 036 with a running issue, an Echo that won't start, a Cub Cadet that won't start, a Stihl 028 with a running issue, 271 for service, 461 with tensioner issues, a 261 for service, and a 170 that hit something. Well, let's start with this MS250 that doesn't run well. I'll see you over at the workbench. Good morning. Welcome back to my workbench. This is the third saw of the morning. So we have this Stihl MS250 on the bench today. And the customer says does not want to stay running and sharpen the chain. Okay, well, let's find out what the problem is. So that chain is new. There's no need to sharpen a new chain. So I guess the first thing we'll do is we'll check the fuel, see if there's fuel in it, and I'll go outside and try to start it and see if I can get the same issue that he's having. Let's see if there's any fuel. Yep, almost full tank of something in there. It's hard to know what's in there by looking through with a flashlight, so we'll just dump it out and have a good look at it. If it looks good, we'll put it back in and we'll head outside. Yes, that is dirt in the bottom of that container. This was a clean container. I'll pour this into glass and then you'll get a better look. A bunch of it didn't come out of there. I don't see any water in his fuel, but I see a lot of dirt. Oh my, there's so much dirt in that fuel tank. Let me see if I can get you close enough to see it. It's going to be hard to show you this, but I'll see what I can do here. You can see that chunk down there, right under the fuel line. There's chunks like that all through the tank. I've got an idea. I don't usually use my camera for looking in a fuel tank, but let me grab my camera and we'll look in the fuel tank. Well, let's try something new. Let's take the camera into the fuel tank and see exactly what's going on in here. Okay, so lots of dirt. Whatever that is. Is that a stick? Try to get a better look at that. I don't know what that is. maybe a stick. So yeah, he's got a dirt in his fuel problem, that's for sure. Just reaching down in here with long tweezers. I'm going to see if I can grab that. It is. It's a stick or something. He's got sticks in his fuel tank. Okay, so we know his fuel is dirty. We know his fuel tank is dirty. But there's no water in his fuel. I'm going to pour his fuel back in here. Make sure it has bar oil in it. And we'll go outside and see how this thing runs. So there's how much dirt is not going back in with the gas. That's pretty extreme. Bar oil is full right to the top. Let's go over to the door. I'll meet you over there. Okay, so this MS250, you heard how it runs. Doesn't run very well at all. It's running very lean. And after seeing what came out of that fuel tank, I'm quite suspicious of what else we're going to find here. You know, sometimes you bring a saw to the bench and it's just a quick and easy fix. And sometimes it can be a total can of worms. You never know what you're getting into. But here we are. Let's dig in and find out. First things first, let's jerk the bar and chain off this. Make this a little bit easier to work on. Sprocket is very worn. If we get that far, this will be needing a new sprocket. At this point, it's very easy for my mind to start running to all the scenarios. What should I do first? I know the fuel tank is full of dirt. There's a fuel filter in there. Should I pull the fuel line out? Should I flush the tank out, put a new fuel filter in? Should I pull the top cover off? The muffler is dry and kind of has a whitish tinge to it. That tells me the saw's been running hot. The spark arrestor, I can see it. It's white and clean. So that spark arrestor is not the problem. But this thing has been running hot. So this is the point with a chainsaw where you got to be very careful how you proceed from here. If the piston and cylinder are damaged, there's no point in me. I could flushing this tank out would be a waste of time. Fuel filter would be a waste of time. Doing anything to the saw would be a waste of time if this thing has catastrophic damage. So the first thing we're going to do, pull the top cover off, check out the air filter, pull the spark plug, and look down into the piston and cylinder. So let's get to it. So that is quite a dirty air filter. Quite dirty. Let's pull that spark plug out. Looks like a Bosch plug. When I see a Bosch plug, I immediately imagine it being the original plug. But let me grab my camera and we'll take a look. The piston and cylinder from this side look decent. So they've been making MS250s since 2002, and they still make them. So that's a long run for a chainsaw. This saw was made in 2009. So this saw is about 15 years old. I had a closer look at the spark plug, and you can see the coil wire wear on it. Probably is the original spark plug. Let's go ahead and pull the muffler off this, and we'll have a look at the piston and cylinder from the exhaust side. Spark arrestor's clean. So that's not causing the problem. A little bit of carbon, a little bit of wear, but this saw it's not fried. See right there, the melting and all in here. This thing has been running hot. Probably a good thing he brought it in when he did. Let's do a quick compression test. There we go. Just under 130 pounds of compression. We have looked into the piston and cylinder from both sides, and that's a pass. We've done a compression test. That's a pass. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to pressure vac test the engine. Let's dump the fuel out of this. This guy is in the running for the dirtiest fuel of the year. So I've got 3 holes to seal up here to do a pressure vac test. My spark plug hole, my intake, and my exhaust. So we will put the spark plug back in. Now we will seal the exhaust port up. I need a block off plate for the exhaust on this MS250. There's so many here to choose from, even some homemade ones. I think that's it right there. So for this MS250, if you want to get this from Stihl, there is the part number for it. I know most of you probably don't have all this at home. And if you don't, you can use your muffler to block it off. You would loosen it, slip a piece of rubber over the port, and tighten it back down. But I have the tool, so we're going to go ahead and use it. Some of these are intake blocks. Some of these are exhaust blocks. I get asked about my tools all the time, so I'm just showing you a quick glimpse here. Like here's one that I think I've used this tool once. And then some of these have been used so many times that I almost need new ones. Anyway, let's carry on with this MS250 pressure vac test. This works on different saws, that's why there's different holes. So for this saw, we're going to use the top 2 holes. Okay, so the rubber is in behind my block. Got a couple spacers here. And those are the wrong spacers. There's not enough room to put the nut on. Need a little bit shorter. Yeah, that's probably them there. Yep, that's better. Okay, so there's that all sealed up. Now we'll move on to the intake side. I'm going to take the carburetor off this. I'm going to remove this black plastic thing that holds the air filter. I don't know what Stihl calls it, the technical name, but I'll look it up and let you know. They call that a filter housing. I'm going to go over to the air and just give this a quick little cleanup before I pull this carb off. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back here. So I have the choke linkage to disconnect, the throttle linkage to disconnect, the fuel line attaches the carb right in there. I'm going to pry that off, and then this carb will just pull off for us. Now we will disconnect the fuel line. Let's take the carb off. The tank vent line almost looks like it's been pinched there. See that? I don't know if that'd be from factory or if someone has been into this. The low speed screw is out 1 turn, which is what I would expect. The high speed screw looks like someone's been doing some horsing around in there. Let's go ahead and pressure vac test this saw. So the gasket that came off with the carb, you inspect it. If it's not damaged, you use it for this test. So I've put it on there. I've got my intake block. Couple washers. These just keep my tool from getting destroyed any further. Our intake is blocked off. Our spark plug is in. And our exhaust is blocked off. Let's go ahead and pressure vac test this thing. This is my pressure vac test tool. It's a Mighty Vac. I bought this from Stihl for an outrageous price. So the first thing I do is I test to make sure that my tool is working. Put my thumb over the end. We are working. Hook up to the port. This tool tests vacuum and pressure. I am going to test vacuum first. I'm going to go to half a bar. We have a vacuum leak. When I find a leak like this, the first thing I do is go back and check my connections, just in case I did something wrong. I checked my spark plug, I checked my connection here, and I checked my exhaust port. Everything is tight. And we have a leak. So we're going to move over to pressure, and we're going to use soapy water to find where our leak is. Ken's Small Engines. Can I borrow your tub of water? So after we found that filthy fuel tank, it would have been really easy to assume that we should just clean that tank out, throw a new Chinese carb on, and send her. But this is why I don't. Let's move this over to pressure. And we'll go to half a bar. You can see it slowly dropping there. So I've got some soapy water, and we're going to try to find our leak. I'm going to spray all my connections first to make sure it's not leaking at any connection that I've made. Checking all my connections really well. It's not the exhaust port. It's nothing at the spark plug. I don't see anything wrong with my connections. So we have a major vacuum leak and a much slower pressure leak. I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm going to go order one right now. I'll be back. Okay, that crystal ball is on the way. Should be here tomorrow. So at this point, this is where I would go call the customer and explain everything that I've found and the point that we're at. An MS250 is on sale in Canada right now for $449. So when I call him, I'm going to tell him where I'm at with this, and it'll be his decision as to if he wants me to go any further. Probably crank seal leak. That's what if I had to bet, I would bet on a crank seal leak, but it'll be up to him if he wants me to keep going here. I'll go see if I can get him on the phone, and I'll be right back. I spoke to him. He said, keep going, find the leak, and let him know. So let's find out where this thing is leaking from. Let's pull the recoil off. Sorry guys, my mic just died there, so it's back on charge. We've pulled the flywheel off, and here I am looking at the flywheel side crank seal. And we're gonna see if this is where our leak is coming from. Okay, my mic is back up and working. So there's my crank seal right there. crankcase seal through there. So there could be a leak anywhere in here. I'll pump it back up. You see it dropping. I don't see anything there on that side. There's my piston stop. This came from Stihl. Okay, so the clutch is off. My spark plug's back in. The crank seal is exposed here. Let's put some pressure to it. There's the leak. Crank seal on the clutch side. We know we have a leaking crank seal. Let's test the tank vent. I want to test this tank vent line in the same conditions that I found it. So I'm going to put the carb back on, put the line back where I found it, and we'll test it. Okay, the carb is back on, and the tank vent line is positioned the same way that we found it. It was kind of pinched behind that rubber grommet. So it's right back the way it was. We're going to test it. Let's pull the fuel filter out. Okay, so I'm hooked up here to the fuel line. I'm going to pull vacuum. I can hear it. And I can't build vacuum. So that is working fine. So even with that tank vent line the way we found it, it is not causing this problem. Let's move over to pressure, and then we will be testing the fuel line. And there's no problem there. I'll pull the carb back off and we'll take a look inside of it. We found all kinds of dirt and debris and sticks inside the fuel tank. So I wonder if anything made it inside the carburetor. We'll open this carb up and take a look inside of it. Hey, let's check this carburetor out. Got my new carb stand here that Stu sent me. I've got actually two of them, but I can't use them both at the same time, so we'll have to take turns. We'll give this one a whirl today. Look at that. Very nice. Just gave this a little cleanup. So we'll take the pump side off and see how it looks. Screen is clean. That fuel filter is doing its job. The diaphragm's pretty crinkled up. Let's take a look in the other side. This is quite normal. This is the atmosphere side of the diaphragm. It enters in through that little hole right there. We'll peel that diaphragm off and have a look. So it's clean in there. This is a bit distorted, but this carburetor isn't what was causing this saw's running issue. That fuel filter in that tank worked so well it kept all of that crud out of this carburetor. But the reason this saw is acting the way it is because of that leaking crank seal. If this saw were to be fixed, this carburetor would need new diaphragms and both crank seals replaced on that saw. When you replace one, you usually replace them in a pair. I know it looks like an MS250 exploded on my table because it kind of did. So we have determined that this saw wouldn't run correctly because of a massive air leak in the crank seal on the clutch side. So as I mentioned earlier, you can buy a brand new MS250 for $449 right now in Canada. So I gave the owner a call and he said this chainsaw has done tons of work, it owes him nothing, and he won't be repairing it. He said it's time to send it to the train station, so that's where it's heading. It's not that this chainsaw isn't repairable, because it is repairable, but if you're working on your own chainsaws at home, you know, you could tear this down, replace the crank seals, rebuild the carb, you know, put this saw back together, and you might have a good running MS250. But for the people who don't repair their own saws and are paying someone else to do it, the cost of repairing this versus the cost of replacing it, especially a saw that's 15 years old and has done tons and tons of work, for him, the option was, or his choice was just buying a new one. So the saw will head back and join his brothers and sisters out back. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.